Hey everybody, Colt here with Classic Mini DIY. Today I want to talk about winterizing your Classic Mini. Now, a lot of people are not interested in driving their Minis in the winter, and that's understandable. The heater is kind of subpar, and the car is not exactly what I would call full of creature comforts. So with more modern cars with seat warmers and really nice heaters and proper weather seals, a lot of people want to switch to those cars in the winter, and that's cool. So what I want to cover today is how to make sure that your Mini doesn't have any undue wear and tear on it when it sits still for the span of the winter. And in this video, I'm kind of going to be focusing on the span of time that your car is going to be sitting still, right around 3 to 5 months. Because if it sits much longer than that, you're going to have to take in some additional considerations when kind of prepping your car for storage for something that long. Now, the first thing that I recommend doing, and probably the most important in my opinion, is changing your oil. Now, it's extremely important to change your oil in these cars regularly, but if you're going to leave it in storage for a little while, it's even more important for you to have a fresh batch of oil in your car. Now, there's two different kinds of oil that I like for the Classic Mini. There is the Valvoline VR1 Racing Oil, and there's the Brad Penn Green Oil. Now, both of these are 20 weight 50, but the Brad Penn oil is a hybrid synthetic. But the main thing that you want to focus on with an oil in your Classic Mini is that you have a heavier weight oil because the transmission and the motor share the same motor oil, for better or worse. And the other bit is you want to make sure that the oil has a high zinc content. This is going to provide the most protection for your motor as well as allow the oil to do the most good for all of the different parts that it has to touch. So let's head out. I'm going to show you guys how to change the oil real quick. It's pretty simple. I have a much older video on this, but I think that I want to recap it in this video just in case you guys haven't seen that much older version. So let's head out to the car. So changing the oil on these Minis is probably one of the easiest jobs on the Mini. All you need to do is get down underneath the car, make sure you have a jack stand supporting your jacked up car, and there's a large bolt on the left side of the transmission. I can't get down there to show you, it's a little too dark down there, but there is a bolt with, it's a relatively large socket, and you'll need to loosen that up, and that'll allow the oil to pour out and into your catch pan. Now once you get the drain plug out, it's going to look something like this. There's going to be some kind of filaments on the top of it, and that's just kind of regular wear and tear. You'll also see there's a copper washer around that. You're not going to want to lose that. That's what helps provide the seal to your transmission housing. And if you lose that, you're going to lose the ability to keep that sealed. So I'm going to set this aside. We're going to clean it up and set it aside. And then we'll move into taking the filter out real quick. Now the oil filter is probably the hardest part of this job, and it's not really that hard if it comes unscrewed easily. If not, you might have a little bit of trouble, but you'll see right down in here is my current K&N filter. I'm going to be replacing that with a Purolator filter this time. And you'll also see on the bottom of it, I've got a little magnet, a neodymium magnet. And the reason I do that is because I like to kind of try and collect as much of the metal filament that comes off of the gears and just the regular wear and tear of the motor and keep it in the filter instead of letting it get all over the motor. So let's take that off. I'm going to be using a oil filter remover just like this. You can use all sorts of different stuff. You can dry with your hand. It's probably not going to work, and then we'll get that off. Okay, so once you get that filter off, usually it's a little messy. There'll be a little bit of oil that drips around there. But after you get that filter off, it's important to kind of clean up that area. I really like brake cleaner. You just got to be careful because you don't want to get that on your paint. That can damage your paint pretty severely. So I'm going to get my brake cleaner. I'm going to clean off the housing and everything around it so that the new filter goes on there nice and easy. Now, like I said before, I have a neodymium magnet that I actually put on the bottom of my filter. I've had some bad experiences with getting some small metal shavings in the bypass valve, which ended up requiring a full motor rebuild. So given those experiences, I try and do everything I can to prevent bad things from happening. So I take my neodymium magnet and I put it right on the bottom of that filter, just like that. And that is going to magnetize the filter and pull all the little filaments that get pulled into the filter down to the base, and then when you take your filter out and you throw it away, you're done. There's no need to worry about excessive metal shavings or anything like that in your motor. Between this and the drain plug that has a magnet on it, you are going to be good to go. So I'm going to prime this a little bit, and I also put a little bit of oil around the ring of this filter. In my experience, it makes it a little bit easier to take off in the future. So I'm going to prime that, put some on, and put that back on the car. Also, you're going to want to go ahead and put that drain plug back in so you don't end up wasting all the oil that you're putting in your car. Now the only thing left is just pouring the oil back into your valve cover up here and refilling your motor with oil. Now you don't want to rush this. You want to allow it to kind of settle down. So as you add oil, let it settle. Add a little bit more oil, let it settle. You usually will take about 5 quarts. If you've got an oil cooler, it might be closer to 6, but you shouldn't need much more than that. Just fill it up until it's full. Now once that oil settles, you just want to check your oil level with your dipstick in the front. If you need to add a little more, add a little bit more, and then you should be ready to roll. Now I've also used a Purolator filter on that oil change. You probably saw that when I was unscrewing the other one. Both types of oil and that filter are in my Amazon affiliate store that's linked in the description below. So if you're interested in ordering any of that, you can check out that link and order it right on Amazon if you're not in the United States, or if you are. And in addition to that, 7 Mini Parts sells the filter on their site as well, which is linked below. Now the next thing that I want to recommend to you guys is making sure that you have the correct 50-50 ratio of coolant to antifreeze in your motor, or you're using a waterless coolant. This is extremely important because if you don't have the correct ratio, or you're not using a waterless coolant, the water could freeze inside your motor and cause permanent severe damage to your engine block, radiator, or hoses. And that's because water expands when it freezes, and if the water has nowhere to go inside your engine block, it's just going to expand and crack the block. So it's really important that you guys have the correct ratio of water in your system. Now, I did a video on converting the Mini to a waterless coolant system about a week ago. And if you're interested in doing that in the Mini, or you want to see how that's done, you can check out the link that's popping up in the corner here. The little eye that pops up in the corner, that'll bring you to the waterless coolant video, and you can see exactly how I did that with Evan's waterless coolant. The next thing that you're going to want to do is just some general maintenance items on your Mini. You're going to want to air up the tires completely. This will prevent them from getting excessive rot or from wearing out prematurely from sitting against that pavement. You're going to want to wash your car, and I'm talking like deep clean. I'm talking wash it, clay bar it, get it really clean. Now that also goes for the interior of the Mini. For whatever reason, the classic Mini is prone to getting mice in it. I think that they just love the smell of a classic British car, and they just love it in there. I've had mice in my Mini almost every single time it sat for a long period of time. And in addition to that, there was even a time where I forgot to put the breather back on the transmission case, and a squirrel stored all of its nuts, its walnuts, acorns, all of that in that breather. And let me tell you, I was not too happy about that. I had to take it all apart and get all of the various nuts out of there. And no, I'm not talking about nuts and bolts. I'm talking about literal nuts in there. So anything you can do to kind of make the car less enticing for small critters is going to be beneficial for you. So, you know, take all the extra stuff out of the Mini, take all of your paperwork and your Starbucks cups and whatever else stuff is in the Mini. Take it all out. Now, the next thing that I'd strongly recommend getting is called a battery tender. And what this does is it effectively keeps your battery from dropping below the 12 volts that it needs to operate properly. As batteries degrade, they drop from what they're shipped with, which is usually actually about 13 to 13.5 volts, all the way down to below 12 volts into the 11 volt and even lower range. And once you get below 12 volts, your battery stops working properly. You're going to start seeing electrical issues. It's going to cause problems starting it. You're never going to be able to retain a charge. And that's really when a battery needs to get replaced. And to prevent you from having to replace the battery after it sits for a long time, this battery tender keeps it above that 12 volts. It keeps it charged. It keeps it ready for you whenever you want to walk back out there and start the car right back up. It's pretty simple. You plug it into a wall outlet. It converts that AC current to DC current and then puts it right into your battery using the two little clamps that come with it. Now the last thing that I want to cover is whether or not you should start your Mini up and run it for a little while periodically throughout the winter. There are a ton of different opinions out there about whether or not you should do this. And some people say, oh yeah, start up your motor, let it run for a minute, and then turn it back off. That'll make sure that things keep running properly and that there's no damage to the motor. And other people say, no, don't start your car up. It's bad for those short cranks. If you're not going to bring it out for a drive, don't start it up. You're only causing more harm than good. Now, personally, I'm in the boat of don't start your car during the winter unless you're going to take it out and drive it for a little while. And I'm talking like more than a mile, like bringing it out, driving to the store, coming back. And the reason I feel that way is because over time, moisture is accumulating inside your intake, inside your pistons, and inside your exhaust. You're going to see the most moisture accumulate inside your pistons and intake. And if you start the car up just quickly and run it for only 3 or 5 minutes, what you're effectively doing is taking the moisture that's built up in those systems and the moisture that's outside. And in a cold environment, when air gets cold, it condenses, and in turn, the moisture in that air gets condensed as well. So you're effectively sucking in moisture. And then when you're turning it off quickly, you're not giving it enough time to burn off all that moisture that you just sucked into the motor. Which is why I don't recommend starting your motor unless you're going to take it out and give it a good drive. Which begs the question, why aren't you just driving the Mini anyway in the winter? So to help prevent that moisture from doing any damage to your motor, if you're not going to start it up and you're not going to take it for a drive, what I would recommend doing is putting a little bit of oil into the pistons. And the way you do that is by taking the spark plugs off, which I'll show you right over here. You'll take the spark plugs off and you can take a little oil dripper, something like this, and drip maybe a tablespoon of oil into the pistons, which as it settles will coat the inside of that piston and prevent any sort of excessive rust from happening from moisture buildup inside that piston during the winter. Now the oil's not going to cause any problems for those pistons. Most Minis get a little bit of blow-by of oil from the bottom of the motor anyways. So what's going to happen when you start the Mini up for the first time in the spring is you're just going to get kind of a cloud of smoke, and that's just the oil that's in those pistons that you put in there getting burnt off. Now, like I said, there are tons of opinions on whether or not you should start your car. This is simply my opinion. If you guys disagree with that, start your cars. But in my experience, it's been better to leave the cars off and just make sure that the battery doesn't go bad so it can start in the spring. Now, that's it for Classic Mini DIY today. If you have any questions about winterizing your Mini, or you have any other tips that you think some of the other commenters might like to see, please include them in the comment section below. In addition, any of the parts that I talked about in this video will be linked below. There's an Amazon affiliate store. If you get anything out of that store, I do get kickbacks for the things that you purchase. There's no additional cost to you, but Amazon provides me a small portion of the purchases that you guys make through that system. Also, I'm now an affiliate with 7 Mini Parts, in addition to them sponsoring the channel. And what that means is the same thing it means for Amazon. If you guys need mini parts, click on the link below to order them from their site, and it gives me a small portion of that so that I can keep making really cool videos for you guys. I can keep adding really great content and giving back to you guys. All the money that I make from this channel, I roll straight back into the channel to purchase cool parts to show you guys exactly how to work on your Classic Mini. So, other than that, enjoy those Minis and motor on.